We've all been there. That moment when someone we trust betrays us, when someone we love turns their back on us, or when a person we never expected causes us deep pain. The hurt feels unbearable, and in those moments it can seem like the world is against us. You might remember a time when you felt this sharp sting. Maybe it was a close friend who let you down, a family member who failed to support you, or a colleague who betrayed your trust. I remember a story, one that still weighs heavily on my heart, of a woman who loved deeply, only to have her heart broken by someone she cared for more than anything in the world. She had poured her soul into a friendship, and when she needed it most, that person turned their back on her in a time of crisis. The betrayal was not only painful, but it shook her faith in others. She felt lost and alone, wondering how she could ever move forward from the hurt that had consumed her. But here's the thing. In that moment of pain, we have two choices: to remain shackled by that hurt, or to rise above it and take control of our response. It's important to understand that no matter how much someone hurts you, you have the power to choose how you respond. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. You might not be able to stop the person who hurt you from doing it again, but you can control the way you heal and protect your heart moving forward. It's a hard truth, but it's the truth that empowers you to reclaim your peace. Now, let's look at it from a different perspective. Have you ever wondered why people hurt others? Sometimes it's not even about you. Often, people who cause pain in others are dealing with their own unresolved emotional wounds. The person who hurt you might not even be fully aware of the damage they've caused. They might be struggling with things you can't see. And while that doesn't excuse their actions, it can shift your perspective and give you the space to process the hurt without letting it define you. But we also know that forgiveness is a powerful tool in moving forward. It's easy to confuse forgiveness with excusing the behavior, but it's not. Forgiveness is about freeing yourself from the toxic grip of resentment. When you forgive, you release the hold that pain has over you. You stop carrying the burden of someone else's mistakes on your shoulders. It doesn't mean you forget or allow the same person to hurt you again, but it allows you to move forward with peace in your heart. Which brings me to another crucial point: boundaries. In our journey to heal, we need to learn how to protect ourselves. Setting boundaries isn't about being cold or distant. It's about loving and respecting yourself enough to say, I will not tolerate this behavior anymore. It's about teaching others how to treat you by demonstrating what you will and will not accept. Boundaries are an essential part of self-care and emotional well-being. And finally, after the hurt has been acknowledged, the forgiveness practiced, and boundaries established, it's time to reflect and grow. Every painful experience has the potential to make you stronger if you allow it to. By processing the hurt, learning from it, and using it as a tool for self-reflection, you create space for growth. You will become more resilient, more aware of your emotional needs, and more in tune with your capacity for love, kindness, and compassion. So, how do you deal with those who hurt you? You acknowledge the pain, but you don't let it control you. You choose to respond with empathy, understanding that everyone is fighting battles you may not see. You forgive, not to absolve the other person, but to free your heart. You set boundaries to protect your peace, and you reflect, growing into a stronger version of yourself. Remember, you are not the sum of the hurt you've experienced, but the sum of how you rise above it. Life has a way of testing our emotional limits, and one of the most painful experiences we can go through is being hurt by someone we care about. Whether it's betrayal, disappointment, or rejection, the hurt we feel can feel overwhelming, leaving us feeling as though we are drowning in sorrow. It can seem as though the pain will never end, that it will haunt us forever, and that we will never be able to move past it. In those moments, it's important to allow ourselves to feel the full extent of the pain. We need to understand that feeling hurt is not a sign of weakness, nor is it something to be ashamed of. It is a part of being human. The process of acknowledging our emotions is the first step toward healing. When we're hurt, there's often a temptation to bury those feelings, to ignore the pain in the hope that it will just fade away. We might tell ourselves, it wasn't that bad, or I'll get over it. But this is where we make a mistake. Suppressing emotions can lead to them building up inside like pressure inside a balloon, eventually causing a bigger emotional explosion later on. Acknowledging pain is not about wallowing in it. It's about being honest with ourselves about what we're feeling. It's about recognizing that what happened has affected us deeply, and that it's okay to feel sad, angry, or even confused. When we're hurt, there's often a temptation to bury those feelings, to ignore the pain in the hope that it will just fade away. We might tell ourselves, it wasn't that bad, or I'll get over it. But this is where we make a mistake. Suppressing emotions can lead to them building up inside like pressure inside a balloon, eventually causing a bigger emotional explosion later on. Acknowledging pain is not about wallowing in it. It's about being honest with ourselves about what we're feeling. It's about recognizing that what happened has affected us deeply, and that it's okay to feel sad, angry, or even confused. There is a misconception that strong people are those who push through pain without showing vulnerability, but the truth is that strength comes from being able to face your emotions head on. It takes courage to admit that you're hurt, to allow yourself to feel that hurt, and to allow yourself the time and space to process it. There's an incredible power in acknowledging pain, in confronting it instead of running from it, because this is when true healing begins. When you allow yourself to feel, you're giving yourself permission to begin the process of recovery. It doesn't mean you're weak, it means you're human. And when you allow yourself to experience the full weight of your emotions, you make the first crucial step toward letting them go. Letting ourselves feel the pain also means not blaming ourselves for someone else's actions. Often, when we've been hurt, our minds try to make sense of the situation by placing blame. It's common to ask ourselves what we could have done differently, or to wonder if we somehow brought the pain upon ourselves. But this is another way of suppressing the reality of the situation. We try to make it our fault to feel a sense of control, but sometimes, no matter how much we care or how hard we try, others act in ways that are out of our control. By acknowledging the pain, we free ourselves from the burden of self-blame. It wasn't your fault that they hurt you. Their actions were theirs to own, not yours. We also need to understand that our pain is valid. Just because someone else doesn't see or understand the extent of the hurt doesn't diminish what we're feeling. The truth is, no one else can truly understand the depth of our emotions unless they have walked the same path. While it's helpful to lean on others for support, it's equally important to be gentle with ourselves in these moments. Don't compare your pain to anyone else's. Your experience is yours alone, and it is just as significant as anyone else's. No one has the right to invalidate your feelings, not even you. When we acknowledge our hurt, we're also giving ourselves the opportunity to heal. Healing isn't a linear process, nor does it come with a clear timeline. It's different for everyone, and the only way to truly begin healing is to face what's happened head on. It's in the recognition of the hurt that we can begin to untangle the emotions that are tied to it. Instead of keeping those feelings locked away, we give them the attention they need so they can be processed and ultimately released. Without this acknowledgement, healing is delayed because we're not truly allowing ourselves to feel the full weight of the emotions attached to the situation. In the end, acknowledging the pain isn't about keeping the hurt alive forever. It's about giving ourselves permission to experience it so that we can eventually let go. It's about understanding that we are human, and part of being human means we will encounter moments of pain. What matters is how we choose to move forward after those moments. The first step is acknowledging the hurt, allowing ourselves to feel it, and understanding that it is a natural part of life. By doing so, we give ourselves the freedom to heal and move beyond the pain, growing stronger in the process. When we experience hurt from someone else, there is one crucial aspect that often goes overlooked: the power of our response. While we cannot control the actions or behavior of others, we always have control over how we choose to react. This realization can be incredibly freeing, as it shifts the focus from the person who has hurt us to ourselves. No matter how deeply someone's actions may wound us, we are the ones who hold the key to how the situation will affect us moving forward. Understanding that we have a choice in our response allows us to reclaim a sense of autonomy, dignity, and peace that no one can take away from us. One of the first steps in taking control of our response is recognizing that while we can't change what has happened, we can choose how we process and interpret it. Often, when we are hurt, our first reaction is to react emotionally, perhaps with anger, sadness, or a desire for revenge. These emotions are valid and natural, but it's important to remember that they are just initial reactions, not the final response. If we allow ourselves to be entirely consumed by our emotions, we might make decisions that we later regret, or we might stay stuck in a cycle of hurt that prevents us from moving forward. By choosing to take a step back, even for just a moment, we can create space between the initial emotion and our ultimate response. This space gives us the clarity to decide how we want to react rather than merely reacting out of hurt. Sometimes the natural inclination is to confront the person who hurt us, to demand an explanation, or even to seek revenge. But this often ends up exacerbating the pain, leading to further conflict or regret. The desire for justice is understandable, especially if the hurt was deep or unjust. But it's important to recognize that we can achieve emotional peace without having to make the other person suffer in return. Seeking retribution may feel good in the short term, but it rarely leads to long-term healing. Instead of allowing the actions of others to dictate how we act, we must consciously choose to respond in a way that aligns with our values and our inner peace. One of the most powerful choices we can make in the face of hurt is to practice emotional maturity. This means taking responsibility for how we handle our emotions, acknowledging that our responses are within our control. While we can't always change the behavior of others, we can choose to rise above their actions and maintain our integrity. For example, when we choose not to react impulsively with anger or resentment, we give ourselves the opportunity to respond thoughtfully and constructively. This can be difficult, especially when the hurt feels fresh and raw, but it is through these moments that we develop resilience and emotional strength. A crucial part of managing our response is understanding that not all situations require a response at all. Sometimes silence is the most powerful form of communication. When someone has hurt us, especially if that person is unlikely to acknowledge or apologize for their actions, responding directly may be futile or only escalate the situation. In such cases, choosing not to react can be an act of strength. By refusing to engage in further conflict or drama, we regain control over our emotional state and prevent the other person from dragging us into their negativity. Choosing not to react doesn't mean suppressing your emotions. It means recognizing that some battles aren't worth fighting and that your energy is better spent on healing and moving forward. Another aspect of choosing how to respond is the decision to forgive. Forgiveness is a profound act of emotional strength. It's not about letting someone off the hook for their wrongdoing. It's about letting go of the emotional hold that their actions have on you. Holding on to anger or resentment only keeps you tethered to the pain they caused, allowing them to continue to control your emotions even after the fact. Forgiveness frees you from that control, enabling you to regain your peace and move on. It's not an easy choice, especially when the hurt is deep, but it is often the most empowering decision you can make for your own well-being. Furthermore, part of our response involves setting boundaries to protect ourselves from further harm. We can choose to engage with the person who hurt us, but we can do so with clear boundaries in place. If the relationship has caused us pain, it may be necessary to limit or even sever ties for our own mental and emotional health. Boundaries are not about punishment. They are about self-preservation. By choosing to protect ourselves in this way, we ensure that we don't allow the same hurt to continue. It is important to recognize that protecting ourselves emotionally is not an act of weakness, but an act of self-respect. Ultimately, the way we respond to hurt can determine our ability to heal and move forward. By taking ownership of our response, we move from being passive victims of the situation to active participants in our healing journey. We can choose to respond with grace, emotional maturity, and strength, which not only helps us heal, but can also elevate us above the toxicity of the situation. It is through our responses that we have the power to take control of our emotional well-being, regardless of how others choose to act. In the face of pain, we must remember that we always have the power to decide how to respond, and that decision can set the course for our emotional healing and future happiness. When someone hurts us, it can be easy to see only our own pain and the immediate damage caused by their actions. We may feel anger, confusion, or sadness, often focusing entirely on how we have been affected. However, one of the most powerful tools we can use in the healing process is the ability to empathize with the person who has caused us harm. Understanding that the individual who hurt us might be struggling with their own pain or unresolved issues can shift our perspective and transform the way we experience their actions. Empathy in this context doesn't mean excusing or justifying the hurtful behavior. It doesn't mean that we should accept being treated poorly or allow ourselves to be mistreated. Rather, it's about recognizing that people often act out of their own unresolved struggles, whether those struggles are emotional, psychological, or related to past trauma. When someone hurts us, it's often not just about use, it's about their inability to cope with their own pain. This realization doesn't negate the pain we feel, but it helps us understand that the person's actions may not be a direct reflection of our worth or character. Take, for example, a situation in which someone you love betrays your trust. At first, it's easy to be consumed by feelings of betrayal and hurt, and these emotions are natural. But if you take a step back and try to understand the context of the situation, you might begin to see that the person who hurt you is struggling with their own insecurities, fears, or emotional wounds. Perhaps they felt threatened or overwhelmed by something in their own life, and rather than addressing that pain, they projected it onto you. Maybe they acted impulsively or out of fear, never fully realizing the consequences of their actions. In moments like these, it's important to recognize that their behavior is not necessarily a reflection of who you are, but a manifestation of their own internal battles. Empathy allows us to understand that everyone is fighting battles that we may not be able to see. The person who has hurt us is likely dealing with their own issues that might have nothing to do with us. It could be that they were raised in a home where emotional expression was discouraged, or they may have experienced loss or trauma that they've never processed. This understanding doesn't excuse their behavior, but it provides a deeper context for why they may have acted the way they did. Recognizing this can sometimes soften the anger and resentment we feel, not because their actions were justified, but because we begin to understand that they too are human and fallible. This shift in perspective is important because it helps us separate the person from their behavior. When we are hurt, it is easy to place all our focus on the actions of the individual, demonizing them in our minds. We might label them as bad or selfish, creating a barrier between us and the possibility of reconciliation or healing. But by empathizing with them, we begin to see that they are not defined by their actions. They are human, just like us, with their own struggles, limitations, and flaws. This does not mean we should minimize the impact of their behavior, but it allows us to move past the immediate reaction of anger and frustration, making space for healing and forgiveness. Furthermore, practicing empathy doesn't only benefit the person who has hurt you, it benefits us too. When we choose to empathize with someone who has caused us pain, we are taking the high road, choosing to rise above the situation rather than being consumed by negative emotions. This can bring a sense of peace and personal strength. By understanding that the hurtful actions are a reflection of the other person's struggles, we can take back our power. We are no longer defined by their actions. Instead, we are able to maintain our emotional balance and protect our peace, regardless of what others do. Empathy helps us release the grip that anger or bitterness has on us, allowing us to move forward without carrying the emotional weight of someone else's pain. However, it is important to remember that empathy is not about making excuses for someone's behavior. It's about acknowledging that their actions may come from a place of pain or unresolved conflict. This doesn't mean we should tolerate abuse or repeated harmful behavior. We must still set boundaries and protect ourselves from being mistreated. Empathy helps us recognize that while someone's pain might explain their actions, it does not absolve them of responsibility for how they have treated us. It is possible to empathize with someone while still holding them accountable for their behavior and deciding not to allow it to continue. In the end, the practice of empathy can transform the way we heal from hurt. Instead of staying locked in a cycle of anger and resentment, we can open ourselves up to understanding the broader context of the situation. We can see the person who hurt us not as a villain, but as a flawed human being who is navigating their own struggles. This shift in perspective can create space for forgiveness, not for the sake of the person who hurt us, but for our own peace and emotional well-being. It helps us move from being victims of circumstance to being empowered individuals who have the ability to choose our emotional responses regardless of what others do. Empathy does not excuse bad behavior, but it does give us the freedom to release the grip of pain and move forward with greater understanding and compassion. In conclusion, dealing with those who hurt us is never an easy journey, but it is one that can ultimately lead to profound personal growth and healing. It begins with acknowledging the pain we feel, recognizing that it is valid and part of our human experience. From there, we empower ourselves by choosing how we respond, refusing to let the actions of others control our emotional state. Empathy allows us to shift our perspective, understanding that those who hurt us are often struggling with their own pain, and this realization can help us release resentment and move forward. Ultimately, through forgiveness, setting boundaries, and learning from the experience, we can rise above the hurt and emerge stronger, wiser, and more resilient. I wish you all the best as you navigate your own journey of healing. Remember, you are never defined by the hurt you've experienced, but by how you choose to grow from it. Thank you for your attention, and may you find the strength to heal, the courage to forgive, and the wisdom to protect your peace. Good luck on your path forward, and thank you for allowing me to share this moment with you.